Here, as always, is to take a stack of dense, fascinating source material, historical accounts, archaeological reports, ancient manuscripts, and really extract the essential insights.
To give you that fast track to being truly well-informed.
And today, we are undertaking a pretty critical deep dive into the ministry of Yeshua of Nazareth.
Right, and we're trying to move beyond, just abstract theological discussion.
Okay.
We are looking at Yeshua as a verifiable historical individual, someone whose life, whose actions, whose teachings were meticulously recorded in a very specific time and place. This deep dive is really going to focus intensely on the revolutionary power that was demonstrated during his ministry in first century Palestine.
And that grounding in reality it's just non-negotiable for understanding this narrative, isn't it?
It's everything.
We're talking about real places. You have Nazareth, the small town he grew up in, and then the critical operational center for his early ministry, the bustling region around the Sea of Galilee.
Exactly. This is not set in some ethereal realm. It's grounded in the dust, the stone, and, the Roman occupation of real Galilean villages.
It's crucial to visualize this geography, I think.
Absolutely. The Sea of Galilee was, for all intents and purposes, the economic heartbeat of the entire region.
Right. Fishing and trade.
It facilitated a massive fishing industry, but also the trade routes that connected Roman and Jewish infrastructure. So towns like Capernaum, they were these busy hubs where daily life and, of course, conflict played out.
So when the sources describe an event, it's not a vague once upon a time?
No, they root it in specific houses, in specific towns, and many of these have actually been excavated and identified.
And that's exactly where today's mission takes us, straight to one of those specific, highly attested events, the healing of the paralytic in Capernaum.
Aye, yes.
What makes this particular story so potent is that it wasn't just a quiet moment of healing, it was a spectacular, highly disruptive public act.
One that forced a decisive confrontation with the entire religious and legal establishment of the time. It wasn't just a miracle. It was a carefully constructed public challenge.
A test of authority.
That's it. A test of authority that really defined his ministry from that point forward.
So the central question we are unpacking for you today is this. Why did his healings matter so fundamentally back then, in a world defined by suffering and this rigid legal authority?
And, more importantly, why does the power demonstrated in that single moment matter to the deep-seated pain and worries we all carry now, 2,000 years later?
So where do we even begin to unravel this knot?
We have to start with the reality of first century life. Because without that context, the healing it loses its incredible impact.
Life in first century Palestine, it really was a study in profound, almost brutal contrast. You had the visible presence of the Roman Empire everywhere. Centurions, tax collectors, imperial architecture.
People enjoying relative comfort and absolute power, often built on the backs of the local labor force.
And then you had the Jewish elite, the nobility and influential religious leaders who were navigating this really delicate balance between Roman rule and preserving their own tradition.
But for the vast majority of the population, the poor beggars, the humble fishermen, the agricultural peasants, life was a hand-to-mouth existence.
The subsistence life.
Completely defined by the immediate environment. And in that environment, the universal reality of pain and illness was, it was inescapable.
When we talk about disease and disability in that era, the sources are really clear on this. It meant far more than just physical discomfort.
Oh, absolutely. It often meant social and economic death.
We just can't overlay our modern safety nets onto that world, can we?
That is the key distinction. There were no social welfare programs, no disability checks, no specialized medical facilities offering long-term care or physical therapy. It just didn't exist.
So if you were well, you worked.
And if you couldn't work, you became a complete, devastating economic burden on your family unit in a society that already struggled daily for survival.
And paralysis specifically, like in the case of the man in Capernaum, that must have been the ultimate sentence for self-sufficiency.
Absolutely. Just think about the physical logistics for a moment. A man with paraplegia or quadriplegia was hardly dependent on others.
He couldn't fish, he couldn't farm.
He couldn't trade, couldn't do anything. He was restricted to relying entirely on his family's labor or, the inconsistent charity of the community.
Which, in a subsistence society,
where everyone needed to contribute just to put bread on the table. A paralyzed family member was often a crippling economic weight.
But the suffering wasn't just physical or financial. You're saying there was a huge social and spiritual stigma attached to chronic illness as well.
That's where the shame comes in. Chronic illness often brought shame not just for the individual, but for their entire family.
Right.
Popular theology, which we can see from conversations recorded in the texts themselves, frequently linked long-term conditions or disabilities directly to a perceived sin.
So either something you did or something your parents did.
Exactly. So this paralytic, he was carrying a double burden: the immense physical limitation and the crushing guilt and social shame of being viewed as potentially cursed or rejected or even abandoned by God.
So his illness was, in a way, a public declaration of his spiritual failure.
It was. And this context of absolute desperation, economic, social, and spiritual, is why the location and the architectural details are so incredibly vital to the story.
Let's focus on Capernaum then. What do the archaeological sources tell us about the place and, the specific house where this happened?
Capernaum was small, maybe 1,500 residents at its peak. It was located perfectly for fishing and trade, right there on the Sea of Galilee.
Okay.
The houses were functional, built primarily with local black basalt stone, which gives them this very dark, dense appearance. But most importantly, the structure of the roofs is what gives credibility to this specific story.
Wait, okay, why is the roof construction so important? Couldn't the gospel writers have just, made up the roof element to make the story sound more dramatic?
That's a great critical question.
Why is this specific architectural detail historically reliable?
We have to rely on archaeology here. If these houses had been built with heavy Roman-style tiled roofs, or, impenetrable modern concrete,
The story wouldn't make sense.
the story of 4 men digging through it would be physically impossible, or at least require specialized tools and a massive amount of time.
Right.
But excavations and analysis of preserved fragments in Galilee confirmed the standard construction for peasant homes.
Yeah.
Wooden beams laid across the stone walls, covered with a layer of compressed clay mixed with straw or reeds.
So it's not just an assumption, it's documented reality.
Precisely. The sources confirm this type of roof was solid enough to walk on or even store things on, but, and this is the crucial part, it was weak enough to be dismantled with bare hands in half an hour.
Wow.
This one detail moves the event from the realm of allegory into historical plausibility. It confirms that the event could have happened precisely as described within the real-world constraints of first-century Galilean building practices.
So the stage is set in this specific, verifiable, house-likely Simon Peter's, given the tradition, and Yeshua is teaching. The house is quickly packed, but the crowd isn't just locals. It includes this investigative commission.
Yes, and their presence elevates the stakes exponentially. This was not a friendly audience.
Not at all.
The texts are clear that Pharisees and teachers of the law had converged, often traveling significant distances from Galilee, Judea, and even from Jerusalem itself.
And they weren't there to hear a sermon.
No, they were there on an official mission.
They were basically the religious audit team.
That's a good way to put it. Tasked with documenting and evaluating Yeshua's activities because he was challenging their authority and attracting these massive, unauthorized crowds.
And their presence is one of the strongest historical markers in this whole account, isn't it?
I think so. If you were just inventing a story to bolster a narrative, why would you place your future powerful enemies at the absolute center of the miracle?
Good point.
The fact that hostile witnesses were present, watching the entire event unfold and unable to dispute the physical outcome, makes the event much harder for historians to just dismiss as an evolving legend. Their silence confirms the facts.
And this really highlights Yeshua's immediate social impact. His ministry crossed every conceivable boundary.
It did.
He was engaging the common people, the poor, the outcasts, but at the same time attracting the scrutiny of the elite, the Pharisees, and later even Roman military leaders like the centurions whose faith he praised.
Healing was the great equalizer. It was the universal need that transcended all these rigid class and social lines.
Okay, let's pivot from the crowd to the man himself. He's carried on a krabatos.
Yes, the Greek word is simple, but it's very evocative. It wasn't one of the luxurious carved beds of the Roman or Jewish wealthy.
No.
It was a thin, simple mat of woven reeds or rough straw. It was, in short, the bedding of the poor.
The symbol of his entire life.
Exactly. This krabatos wasn't just a means of transport. It symbolized his poverty, his dependency, and his confinement. It was the absolute center of his identity for years.
But it would become the definitive symbol of his complete restoration.
And he arrives not alone, but supported by 4 friends. We often read past this detail so quickly, but the extraordinary commitment of these 4 men, It speaks volumes about first-century Mediterranean loyalty.
Their actions went way beyond normal friendship, didn't they?
Oh, far beyond. We need to remember the sheer chaos they would have encountered. The house was packed, maybe 30, 40 people crammed into the central courtyard and rooms shoulder to shoulder.
Giving up at the door would have been the easy thing to do.
It would have been the socially expected, convenient action to excuse themselves because the timing was bad or the crowd was too large.
But they didn't. They prioritized their friend's desperate need over social etiquette, property concerns, and just massive inconvenience. They chose radical disruption.
They chose what the sources call absolute loyalty. And this is the moment we need to visualize fully to feel the weight of their faith.
So they climb the external stairs or ladder up to the flat roof.
And they begin this intense manual labor. Can you imagine the dusty chaos inside?
Oh, wow. The dust, the bits of straw and clay beginning to rain down on the heads of the crowd.
Yes. You've Yeshua teaching, and suddenly there's this scraping sound from above, and then material starts falling.
Sheer indignity. Think of the Pharisees, these dignified, robed, meticulous men in the room now being covered in debris from the roof.
And this wasn't a quick operation either. Archaeological modeling suggests that digging a hole large enough for a man lying on a mat to pass through, say, 3 feet by 7 feet, would easily take 15 to 20 minutes.
15 to 20 minutes of continuous, noisy, dirty labor.
So for 15 to 20 agonizing minutes, the entire packed room, Yeshua, the skeptical authorities, the curious locals, they're all waiting, watching the progress, getting covered in falling dust and fragments from above.
The teaching stops.
The world stops.
The audacity is just incredible.
It is. And then, when the hole is finally sufficient, the ropes are attached to the cribados. Slowly, shakily, the paralyzed man descends.
He hangs right there in the center of the room.
Positioned directly in front of Yeshua and, crucially, suspended right over the heads of the highly judgmental authorities. The air must have been thick with expectation, indignation, and, of course, dust.
It's the ultimate spectacle of faith and desperation.
It truly is.
So here we are. The man is suspended, dirtied from the roof, paralyzed for years. Everyone expects a physical healing command.
That's the logical next step.
But this is the theological pivot point. Yeshua does not deliver the expected physical healing.
He looks up at the man hanging there, and he bypasses the physical issue entirely. He says the last thing the crowd, or the investigative commission, expected to hear.
What does he say?
He says, Tenon, afientaiso, hai hamartiaisu, in English. Son, your sins are forgiven.
That opening word, tenon or son, that's important, isn't it?
It's very important. It's not a formal title. It's a term of intimate, affectionate address, suggesting compassion and immediate acceptance.
He's not treating the man as an object of pity.
No, but as a beloved individual. And he addressed the deeper wound first. Remember, this man carried the societal shame of presumed sin.
Right, the double burden.
Yeshua saw beyond the physical paralysis, the symptom to the spiritual guilt and psychological isolation the man carried. By declaring him forgiven, Yeshua granted him profound psychological and spiritual liberation before even addressing the physical body.
So forgiveness meant social reintegration. It meant he was no longer considered cursed. But for the Pharisees, this wasn't compassionate.
It was a theological declaration of war, an immediate scandal.
I can only imagine.
The authorities immediately recognized the gravity of the grammatical construction. Aphiantai is a crucial word here. It's often interpreted as a present passive indicative, sometimes with perfect tense implications.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
It means the forgiveness is being declared not as something that will happen in the future, but as something that is done and settled by a current action. It's an active present declaration.
Got it.
And the text records their silent internal reaction, which Yeshua perceives instantly. Why does this man speak like this? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins except God alone?
And here we have to pause, because on that point, the authorities were absolutely correct in their theology.
They were 100% correct. According to first-century Judaism, the ultimate forgiveness of sin was God's exclusive prerogative.
Only God could do it.
It was a power that flowed from the divine, and it was mediated on earth through the elaborate system of the Jerusalem temple, the sacrifices, the atonement rituals performed by the priesthood.
So no human being could just declare it.
Not on their own independent authority,
Yeah.
not even the high priest outside of his specific ritual duties.
So Yeshua's statement, "Your sins are forgiven," was a direct, explicit claim of divine authority.
He was essentially equating his power with God's. That is the literal definition of blasphemy, which was punishable by death under the law. The tension here is immense.
This is why he immediately exposes their thoughts, right? He turns their private indignation into a public strategic challenge.
Exactly. He says, why do you reason these things in your hearts? Which is easier to say to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven, or to say, rise, take your mat, and walk.
He's setting a logical trap for them.
A brilliant one. The spiritual claim, your sins are forgiven, is inherently unverifiable by physical evidence. Anyone can say that.
Right, I can say that, you can say that, there's no proof.
But the physical command, rise, take your mat, and walk, requires immediate, irrefutable physical proof. If he couldn't deliver the visible easy proof, the invisible harder claim would be dismissed as fraud.
So he's basically saying, you doubt my authority over the invisible spiritual realm. Fine, I will now prove my authority by doing the highly visible, scientifically impossible thing.
Precisely. The physical miracle serves as the undeniable validation of his spiritual authority. The ultimate validation follows, which is the core statement of this entire confrontation. Yeshua acts so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins.
He links the titles, the power, and the mission irrevocably.
Yes. The theological battle is won by perception, and now comes the physical validation.
The 6 words that seal the confrontation and change the man's life forever.
The simple command. And this is critical. No elaborate rituals, no incantations drawn from the magical papyri we know were common at the time, no long, drawn-out invocation.
Just direct, simple words.
Recorded in the Greek. Eger ondon krapaton sukai hypij eiston oikonsu.
Rise, take your mat, and go home.
The Aramaic word he likely would have used would have been quum. It's a short, everyday command. It's the kind of phrase you'd use to rouse someone from sleep. Get up.
The simplicity itself is a statement.
Yes. The simplicity and directness contrast sharply with the complexity and mysticism employed by other supposed healers of the era. They often relied on these elaborate pseudoscientific formulas. Yeshua's power is shown to be inherent and immediate.
And the texts confirm the sequence with stunning precision. It says the man immediately rose, picked up his mat, and went out.
And this is the moment we have to truly grasp the biomechanical impossibility of what just happened.
Okay, break that down for us.
We have to stop and think about the physical reality of paralysis. If this man had been paralyzed for any significant period, let's say a year, but likely much longer, he would suffer from severe muscle atrophy.
Meaning his muscles would have wasted away.
Wasted away from disuse. But even more importantly, he would have lost all neuromuscular coordination.
Right. Years of lying still means his brain wouldn't even know how to command his legs to balance, to contract, to move him forward in a coordinated way.
Medical professionals from that era and today would confirm. Even if the neurological function were somehow instantly restored, the body itself would still require months, if not years, of painful rehabilitation.
Physical therapy, retraining.
Exactly, to restore function. Yet the text states he rises, he bends, he carries the heavy mat, and he walks perfectly, without hesitation, without staggering, and with zero recovery time.
So the sources are stating that the transformation was complete and instantaneous. It's not gradual recovery.
It's radical creation. This specific type of neurological and physical restoration, instantaneous and complete, has no parallel in the medical literature of the time.
Ancient treatments wouldn't even come close.
Not even in the same universe.
Yeah.
They often involved heated oils, primitive bloodletting, various herbal unguents, all utterly useless for neurological function restoration. The only explanation that fits the text is divine intervention.
And here is a fascinating twist on the faith principle. The text explicitly notes that Yeshua responded, seeing their faith.
Yeah.
Faith of the 4 friends, not the man's.
This is such a profound theological and social takeaway for us. It immediately challenges the modern, often highly individualistic concept that healing is solely dependent on the sick person's personal level of belief.
So it's not just about you and your personal faith journey.
No, the friends' commitment, their willingness to climb the roof, destroy property, and face public scorn, that was the physical manifestation of their trust in Yeshua's power.
So it really emphasizes the power of collective faith and a supportive community. It shows that the desperate actions of others can open the door to healing for the one who's suffering.
That's a massive insight into how faith operates. It demonstrates that Yeshua sees and honors faith wherever he finds it, whether it's in the person needing the miracle or in the supportive community fighting to bring the suffering into his presence.
Which brings us back to the investigative commission. The crowd naturally was amazed and glorified God. But the Pharisees and scribes, the men who traveled from Jerusalem to document and dismantle this ministry, what was their immediate reaction?
Silence. Utter silence.
They were caught in an impossible logical trap.
Completely. They could not deny the physical evidence. The evidence was literally standing up, rolling up his bed, and walking out the door right in front of their eyes.
But to acknowledge the healing?
Meant validating Yeshua's claim to divine authority, which contradicted their entire theological framework and threatened their power structure.
It was an existential crisis for them.
Their silence, therefore, is confirmation. It indicates their inability to dispute the facts of the event, leaving them only the option to dispute the interpretation and the source of the authority.
And this was the turning point.
The sources confirmed this was the critical turning point. From this moment forward, the religious leaders moved beyond mere scrutiny. They began actively conspiring, not just to discredit Yeshua, but to eliminate him. The stakes had become irreversibly life or death.
We see this beautiful pattern here, though. The physical healing leads directly to social and spiritual restoration. The man went out before everyone. This wasn't a private, hidden healing.
No, it was a public declaration of complete reintegration.
And he carried the mat, the crubados. We spoke earlier about this object being the symbol of his dependency, his confinement, his social exclusion.
Right.
By picking it up and walking away with it, he transformed a symbol of imprisonment into a visible, tactile testimony of his freedom.
It wasn't left behind. It was reclaimed as a trophy of restoration.
He went home, not as a burden, but as a productive member of society. And in that subsistence economy, this restored dignity, hope, and purpose, not just to him, but to his entire family unit.
They were now released from the crushing economic weight of caring for him. The healing was holistic, body, soul, and social standing.
That's why the narrative is so powerful. It's a complete reversal of fortune.
He went from being the center of pity and shame to the center of celebration and witness.
And this detailed accounting of consequences, the social impact, the economic restoration, this is what lends such profound credence to the account. Let's double down on the archaeological confirmation we touched on earlier. What specifically do the excavations in Capernaum show us?
The site traditionally identified as Simon Peter's house has undergone extensive analysis, and the dimensions of the central space of that first-century house align perfectly with the narrative.
So it's large enough for a crowd?
Large enough to hold a significant crowd, yet small enough that a hole in the roof would place the descending man at the absolute dead center of the room.
Right in the sightline of everyone, especially the authorities. So the house itself acts as a frame for the drama.
Precisely. And furthermore, analysis of the preserved Galilean roof fragments is key. It confirms that layered structure of wooden beams, compressed clay, and straw.
So this isn't theoretical. We have material evidence.
We do. This structure could indeed be removed manually in a short span of time, 15 to 20 minutes, confirming that the disruptive method chosen by the Friends was historically possible within the existing architecture.
And beyond the architecture, scholars emphasize the power of the textual consistency. The account appears in Mark, Matthew, and Luke, the Synoptic Gospels. Why does that matter for historical verification?
Because it suggests multiple independent traditions were preserving the memory of this event. In historical analysis, when different streams of tradition, say, one associated with Peter, which is Mark, and others associated with generalized teaching, like Matthew and Luke,
When they all agree on a specific, detailed event.
it points to a stable, undeniable core memory. This wasn't a late evolving legend. It was a foundational, verifiable event from the very beginning of the ministry.
And critically, the historical sources tell us that the controversy wasn't over if the healing happened. There's no record of the Pharisees or critics denying that the man walked.
They couldn't deny the physical evidence. The man was known to the community, and now he was walking among them. The dispute was strictly over the authority that made him walk.
And that is the ultimate proof of the event's historical solidity.
It is. The hostile witnesses couldn't deny the effect, only the cause. It was a scientifically improbable healing, a full-blown theological crisis, and strong historical evidence, all wrapped up in one public, decisive moment.
We've established the profound historical and theological weight of this confrontation in Capernaum. Now, let's bring it forward 2,000 years. This is the so what for the person listening to us right now.
Okay, let's pivot now to the confrontation we face every day. We live in a world of advanced medical science, but we still face profound suffering.
Right.
Maybe it's not physical paralysis, but it's the paralysis of chronic, debilitating anxiety. It's the atrophy of broken relationships. It's the chronic depression that prevents action.
The decision fatigue that locks us in place, or just that spiritual emptiness that modern life so often leaves us with. What does this ancient story tell us about our contemporary crises?
I think the core message needs to resonate through the centuries.
And that is?
The message is simple yet revolutionary. The same Yeshua who walked the dusty roads of Galilee, who spoke cum to a paralyzed man, still possesses that power today.
His authority hasn't diminished.
His compassion hasn't faded. Only perhaps our awareness of that available power has lessened.
But healing isn't magic, and the texts make it clear it's not a simple transaction, like putting a coin in a slot. The sources constantly emphasize the required element of faith.
Faith is radical trust, not a guarantee. The Capernaum healing wasn't the result of a guaranteed process or a simplistic formula. It required genuine, desperate faith. The radical trust of those four friends in this specific person who has authority over suffering, disease, and despair. Yeshua responded to their faith, demanding that we bring a quality of trust and persistence to him.
And we saw that spiritual healing was primary.
It was.
Just as Yeshua addressed the man's profound guilt and shame, his soul, before he addressed the body, true healing today has to address the root causes of our distress, not just the physical or psychological symptoms.
We seek external fixes, but Yeshua starts internally. We see a clear pattern in his entire ministry that continues to apply today. Desperate need, coupled with genuine active faith.
It's like breaking a roof.
Meets Yeshua's boundless compassion, and that often results in miraculous restoration. He healed indiscriminately across social boundaries. The Roman centurion's servant, the poorest beggar, the child of a religious elite, all because they or their advocates approached him with trust.
So, if you are listening today and you feel trapped in some form of spiritual, emotional, or physical paralysis, the call to action is to emulate the friends and the man himself.
Your pain matters to him. Bring it to him in active faith.
Just as the paralytic's friends literally brought him through the ceiling, we are encouraged to approach Yeshua with that same desperation and bold trust, refusing to be blocked by obstacles.
But we must be honest, though, and acknowledge the mystery here.
Of course.
We do not condemn modern medicine. Yeshua absolutely works through doctors and medical science, which are gifts. But we also live in a world where some suffering continues, and we do not always understand the timing or the ultimate purpose of that suffering. Sometimes, healing requires persistent, daily faith that goes beyond the capabilities of the physical world, emphasizing that the ultimate goal remains spiritual restoration and reconciliation, just as it was in Capernaum.
It's the ultimate spiritual foundation.
That's right. When you look at the testimonies of faith throughout history, from the martyrs to the saints to ordinary believers, they testify not just to physical miracles, but to the deep, profound healing of the soul, which grants dignity and purpose even when the physical ailment remains. That's the persistent power of Capernaum.
So, what does this all mean for us? The Capernaum incident was the single greatest public demonstration of Yeshua's singular, non-negotiable authority.
He didn't just break the rules of social etiquette.
No. He forced the issue by breaking a roof, and in doing so, he broke the back of the established theological order by claiming God's exclusive power for himself.
And the takeaway is this. The physical healing, as dramatic and historically verifiable as it was, the man walking out with his bed, it served only to validate the invisible reality. The ultimate authority demonstrated there was not the power to mend muscles, but the power to forgive, to restore the soul, and to restore human dignity. He took a man who was nothing but a burden and sent him home as a walking, talking, undeniable testimony of divine power.
So if the man walking out with his crabatos was undeniable proof of authority over the physical world, what broken piece of your reality, that thing you've been carrying for years, could serve as tangible evidence of the transformative power of faith today? What heavy burden are you ready to pick up and carry away, never to need again, as proof of a faith that breaks through the ceiling?
That's the question.
Think about that until the next time we deep dive.